Of the Outcast, The Shards of Tomorrow. Chapter 9. The Vision. Perspective. Zara Khan. My head, it still feels like it's full of broken glass, sharp edges, reflecting too many things at once. The escape from that place. The light facility, it's a blur. Alarms, shouting, Tenoch's terrifying quiet intensity as everything around him just broke. Ronin barking orders. Even Nova seemed less like a ghost, more like a shadow with a purpose. But underneath it all, behind the fear of then why, is the fear of what's coming. The vision. It's still screaming in here. They're looking at me. All 6 of them. Waiting. Here, in whatever dim, forgotten corner of Modesto we've holed up in, the air thick with dust and the smell of stale fear. Their faces swim in and out of focus, sometimes overlaid with the shifting, jagged patterns that Alasdair sees, sometimes blurred by the tears I can't stop. Nia is trembling beside me, probably feeling the echoes of my terror like an open wound. Ayana keeps glancing over her shoulder, as if the whispers I can't hear are confirming the horrors I can see. Zara? What did you see? Exactly? Ronin's voice, trying for calm, but there's a tight wire in it. Exactly? How do you explain exactly when time is a shattered mirror inside your skull? It wasn't one thing. It was everything. All at once. 1,000 dying moments pressed into a single, unbearable second. It started before the attack, I manage, my voice raspy. The room in the facility, it fractured. Not just in my usual way, Al, not just the edges wobbling. This was different. The air cracked. Like ice. And through the cracks, I close my eyes, but the images are burned onto the insides of my eyelids. Brighter there, almost. Fire, I whisper. So much fire, buildings like skeletons, black against a blood-red sky. Not just the facility, though that was part of it. I saw that too. The pristine white walls we hated, exploding outwards. The labs we were trained in, twisted into burning wreckage. Legion soldiers, their faces cold, impassive, marching through the flames. Their weapons. God, their weapons. They weren't just guns. They pulsed with a sick, dark energy. The same energy that made the air crackle just before the end. But it was bigger than that. So much bigger. Cities, I choke out, trying to force the shards into words. Cities I didn't recognize, and cities I did. London, Tokyo, New York, all of them monuments of ash. The ground split open. Oceans boiled. The images come too fast. A torrent. A wave of nothingness, blacker than any night, swallowing the stars. People screaming, their faces contorted in a silent, universal agony that Nia probably felt full force. The Legion, they weren't just attacking the facility, I try to explain, my hands clenching. They were unmaking things. They had a machine. Or something like it. Huge. Buried deep, it hummed with a power that felt wrong. Ancient and terrible. It was pulling at the threads of everything. The vision shifts, and I see it again, that central point. The heart of the darkness. It's not just about destruction. It's about replacement. A new order. Their order? Cold. Silent. Absolute. The world ending not in a bang, but in a slow, chilling erasure of everything that was. There were echoes, I say, trying to remember the fleeting, less concrete parts. Whispers. Not like Ayana's, but like the universe itself was groaning. Time twisting back on itself. Paradoxes. Realities bleeding into each other. My own fractured perception felt like a sane window compared to what I saw happening to the world. Alasdair is staring at me, his own kaleidoscopic vision, probably making my fragmented explanation even worse. What triggers it, Zara? What starts it all? I don't know, I confess, the helplessness a cold knot in my stomach. It's all broken. The pieces, they don't fit right. I see the end. I see the attack on the facility that was a trigger, a first step for them, maybe. To get something? Or stop something? The images are so vivid, but the connections, the why, it's like trying to grasp smoke. There was something about us, I add, a new, colder chill running down my spine. The Legion. They weren't just after the facility. They were looking for anomalies. For people like us. I saw glimpses, containment fields. Not like Kiesa's. Worse. Draining us. Using our flows for that machine. I opened my eyes, meeting their intense, varied gazes. Tenoch is like a coiled spring, silent but radiating that dangerous stillness. Nova is watching, her face as impassive as ever, but her eyes, maybe a flicker of something. Or am I just projecting? It's not a clear path, I tell them, the weight of it all pressing down on me. It's a storm of endings. The world, our world, it unravels. And the Legion is holding the scissors, the silent stretches, filled only by my ragged breathing and the distant sounds of a city that doesn't yet know it's dying. The pieces are there, scattered in my mind like shrapnel. Putting them together, that's the impossible part. Knowing what to do with them, if we even can, that's even worse. Especially when the world these visions are screaming about is the same one that never wanted us in the first place. Of the Outcast, Ashes and Arguments, Chapter 10. The Plan. Or lack thereof. Perspective, Ronin Sato. Modesto. Smells like dust, despair, and the faint, lingering sweetness of something rotten. Fitting, really. We're holed up in some abandoned warehouse down by the old cannery district, a step up from the gutter, but not by much. 7 of us, 7 walking disasters, fresh from the Legion's demolition party at Kiesa's playground. And now, we're supposed to make a plan. Based on Zara's head-splitting, fragmented horror show. Brilliant. The air in here is thick enough to chew, and it's not just the Modesto May gloom. Zara's finished her recital of doom. She's curled up in a corner now, looking like a startled fawn, occasionally twitching as another aftershock of her visions ripples through her. Nia's practically attached to her, a trembling empathic sponge soaking up Zara's terror and radiating it back out tenfold, making the rest of us feel like our teeth are vibrating. Productive. So, I begin, keeping my voice level, projecting a calm I don't entirely feel. Panic is a contagion, and with this lot, it had spread faster than a wildfire. Cities of ash. Legion unmaking reality. A giant, evil machine. And they're hunting us. That about sum it up, Zara, love? Zara just nods, her dark eyes wide and unfocused. Not much help there. Alasdair, predictably, is pacing. Or rather, his version of pacing, jerky, agitated movements, his gaze darting around as if the peeling paint on the walls is about to morph into a geometric demon. Bloody fantastic, he snarls, kicking a loose piece of debris. So the world's ending, and the psychos who blew up our last hidey hole are after us. What's the plan then? Curl up and die? Sounds about right for this bloody planet. Tenoch, our resident statue of stoic suffering, hasn't moved from his spot leaning against a rusted support beam. His eyes, though, are fixed on Zara, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. Maybe he sees a kindred spirit in her visions of oblivion. Or maybe he's just calculating the blast radius if he finally lets that internal volcano of his erupt. With him, it's always a coin toss. Nova, ever the enigma, is sitting perfectly still, watching us all with that unnerving, empty gaze. If Zara's vision registered with her at all, she's giving no sign. The Legion's methodology, she says, her voice devoid of inflection, like a machine reading a report. Targeting anomalies. Using our flows. The machine, Zara described. It requires a power source. We were intended to be components. Logical. Chilling. And utterly unhelpful in the immediate, not getting killed department. Ayana, meanwhile, is pressed against the far wall, as far from the rest of us as possible, muttering to her unseen companions. They're close, she whispers, her eyes darting to the grimy windows. Not Legion. Not yet. But watchers. Always watchers. Great. Add local peeping toms to our list of worries. Or maybe her voices are just enjoying the ambience of a derelict warehouse in Modesto. Right, I say, forcing a thread of authority into my tone. Someone has to steer this ship of fools, and it sure as hell isn't going to be any of these other basket cases. First things first. This hovel isn't safe for long. Ayana, anything useful from your friends? Specifics? Directions? She shakes her head, her braids flying. Just unease. A wrongness. They don't like this place. They say the air tastes of old pain. Nia whimpers softly at that. Of course she does. Okay, less poetic, more practical. I sigh. Zara, that machine. You said it was buried deep. Any idea where? Any landmark in your broken picture show? Zara squeezes her eyes shut, then opens them again, looking even more lost. Mountains, she says faintly. Big ones. Snow on top. And a symbol. Like a coiled serpent eating itself. But geometric. Sharp. Alasdair stops his pacing. A serpent? Geometric? What the hell does that mean? He looks like his own visual distortions are kicking into overdrive just trying to process it. It means we have a vague, probably useless clue, I cut in, before he can work himself into a flow-induced tantrum. Mountains with snow. In California. In May. Narrows it down a bit, but not much. My mind is already racing. The Legion isn't subtle when they set up major installations. There would be energy signatures, logistical trails. Kissa taught us some things beyond just trying to dissect our powers. The world, Nia whispers, her voice trembling. All those people. Zara saw them screaming. There it is. The crux. The big, ugly question hanging in the stale air. And what about it, Nia? I ask, perhaps more harshly than intended. This world? The one that threw us away like garbage? The one that called us unteachable, disturbed, outcasts? You keen on saving that world? A heavy silence falls. Even Alasdair stops his agitated twitching. The weight of my question settles on them, on me. It's one thing to run from the Legion, because they want to turn us into batteries. It's another thing entirely to actively try and stop their grand, world-ending party, especially when we were never invited to the original celebration of existence in the first place. Tenoch finally speaks, his voice a low rumble, like stones shifting. If they unmake everything, there is no oblivion. Only their order. That is not peace. An interesting take. Destruction, yes, but on his terms, not theirs. Nova adds, her voice still flat, their success implies our continued utility as components. Survival dictates intervention, regardless of altruistic motivation. Pragmatic, as always. So what's the first step, genius? Alasdair challenges, his arms crossed, staring me down, assuming we even decide this crap-hole planet is worth the effort. The plan. It's forming, not as a grand strategy, but as a series underscore of desperate, necessary reactions. First, I say, meeting his gaze, we get out of Modesto. It's too exposed. We find somewhere more remote, somewhere we can think without Ayana's local watchers breathing down our necks. Second, I continue, looking at Zara, you keep trying to piece together those visions. Every detail, no matter how small or broken. That symbol, the mountains. That's our best lead to finding that damn machine, or at least figuring out what the Legion is protecting. Third, and this is where it gets tricky, we learn to use what Kieta taught us, and what our flows actually do, not what she wanted them to do. We're not her lab rats anymore. If the Legion is hunting anomalies, we become the most dangerous goddamn anomalies they've ever seen. And fourth, Ayana asks, her voice barely audible. Fourth, I say, a grim smile touching my lips, we decide if being the unwilling saviours of a world that spat us out is a fate worse than whatever the Legion has planned. But we make that decision with more information, and from a position of strength, not cowering in a warehouse. It's not much of a plan. It's messy. It's driven by self-preservation more than heroism. And it relies on 7 deeply damaged individuals somehow not tearing each other apart long enough to achieve a common goal they're not even sure they want. But it's a start. And in a world that's apparently about to end, a start is all we've got. The ashes of the old world are still falling in Zara's mind. Maybe, just maybe, we can find something worth building in its place. Or at least, something worth fighting for, even if it's just ourselves. Saga of the Outcast, Whispers in the Pines. Chapter 11, Eldorado National Forest. Perspective, The Outcasts. Third Person Limited. The stolen van, a battered relic Ronin had acquired with unnerving ease on the outskirts of Modesto, rattled its way east, away from the flat, stale air of the Central Valley, and towards the distant, saw-toothed silhouette of the Sierra Nevada. Inside, the atmosphere was a volatile cocktail of stale fear, simmering resentment, and the thinnest, most brittle thread of shared purpose. 7 souls, each a universe of private torment crammed together in a metal box hurtling towards an unknown. Zara, pale and huddled by a grimy window, was their unwilling compass. Mountains with snow, she'd whispered, her voice still raspy from recounting her terrifying visions. And the symbol, a snake, like a knot, but all angles. Sharp, Eldorado National Forest. The name had come up after some frantic, hushed arguments over a flickering tablet Ronin had also found, cross-referencing her fragmented symbols with maps and obscure online forums dedicated to conspiracy and forgotten places. It was a vast expanse of green and granite, and somewhere within its depths, they hoped to find the next piece of their catastrophic puzzle. The journey was a study in strained silences and sudden, sharp outbursts. Ayana twitched at every passing car, her unseen companions apparently offering a running commentary of paranoia and suspicion. Nia, wedged between a stoic Tenoch and a nervously fidgeting Zara, seemed to shrink with every mile, the amplified anxieties of the group threatening to suffocate her. Alasdair mostly glowered, the passing landscape occasionally fracturing into aggressive, geometric patterns that made him curse under his breath. Nova, as ever, observed, her gaze sweeping from one occupant to another, her expression as blank and unreadable as a wiped slate. It was Ronin who broke the longest silence, his voice smooth, almost casual, but with an undeniable undercurrent of command. All right, this collective of walking disasters needs a name. The Outcasts is what Kiesa and her whitecoats called us. It's accurate, but it's theirs. We need something of our own. Something that says we're not just victims. Alasdair snorted. How about the doomed? Or the utterly screwed? Got a nice ring to it, don't it? Too defeatist, Nova stated, her voice startlingly clear in the cramped space. Statistically, an element of proactive engagement, however minimal, increases survival probability. She means we shouldn't just roll over and die, Al, Zara murmured surprisingly. The effort of focusing on something other than her visions seemed to lend her a sliver of coherence. What about the shattered? She offered, her voice barely a whisper. Since, well, everything feels like that. A bit on the nose, love, Ronin said, a hint of a smirk in his voice. And still a bit broken. We need something that bites back. The vipers, Tenoch rumbled unexpectedly, his voice startling them all. He tapped a finger against the window, towards the unseen mountains. For the serpent Zara saw. Geometric or not, we strike from the shadows. We are poison to those who hunt us. There was a moment of surprised silence. Coming from Tenoch, the suggestion held a certain weight, a grim finality. The vipers, Ronin repeated, tasting the word. I like it. It's got teeth. Any objections to being the vipers? He scanned their faces. Alasdair shrugged, a non-committal grunt. Ayana just hugged herself tighter. Naya looked like she might be sick. Nova blinked slowly. Zara nodded, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. The vipers it is, then, Ronin declared, a sliver of satisfaction in his tone. Step 1 in forging a weapon from these broken pieces. The next step was harder. And every group of vipers, Ronin continued, his gaze sweeping over them again, lingering perhaps a moment too long on Tenoch, then Alasdair, then settling with an air of inevitability on himself, needs a head. Someone to call the shots. To make the decisions when things go sideways, which, let's be honest, they will. Constantly. Alasdair bristled immediately. Oh, here we go. And I suppose you're volunteering for the crown, are you, Sato? King of the bloody rejects? I'm volunteering to keep us alive, Finch, Ronin countered, his voice dangerously soft. Someone needs to make the hard calls. Someone needs to have a strategy that extends beyond panic and lash out, or curl up and wait for the end. Unless you have a better suggestion. The tension in the van ratcheted up. Naya began to tremble more violently, small, choked sounds escaping her. Ayana started rocking back and forth, muttering, bad idea, they don't like this, they say it will break. I will not follow him, Alasdair spat, glaring at Ronin. And I follow no one who seeks only to control, Tenoch stated, his voice still low but carrying an unmistakable edge of warning. Nova, surprisingly, spoke again. A hierarchical command structure may prove inefficient with this particular asset pool. Distributed leadership based on situational expertise could be more viable. Ronin almost laughed. Situational expertise? Nova, darling, our collective expertise is in being walking catastrophes. Zara sees futures that might kill us, Ayana hears voices that definitely want to, Mia feels everyone's pain so much she can't function, Al sees the world as a bloody acid trip, Tenoch wants to become a black hole, and you feel nothing. What expertise are we distributing exactly? Zara, surprisingly, cut through the rising tide of acrimony. The visions, she said, her voice small but firm, her eyes fixed on some point beyond the windshield. They're my burden. I have to be the one to guide us with them. Not a leader, but the navigator. For this, at least. For finding the serpent. There was a stunned pause. For Zara, the most withdrawn, the most haunted, to assert any kind of role was unexpected. Ronin was the first to recover. He watched her for a long moment, a strange expression on his face. Calculation, respect, perhaps even a flicker of something else. All right, navigator, he said slowly. You point the way with your broken map. I'll handle getting us there in one piece, and making sure we have what we need when we arrive. Al, you and Tenoch can be our heavy ordnance. Nova, you keep being... Nova. Your logic is a refreshing change. Ayana, you're our early warning system, whether you like it or not. And Nia. He glanced at the trembling girl. Naya, you try to tell us when the rest of us are about to emotionally combust before we actually do it. It wasn't an election. It wasn't even a consensus. It was a desperate, unspoken acknowledgement of their fractured strengths and overwhelming weaknesses. Zara, the navigator of nightmares. Ronin, the reluctant, self-appointed strategist and quartermaster. The others, pieces of a broken puzzle, their roles still undefined, their allegiance to this team as fragile as Zara's hold on the present. As the van finally chugged its way into the lower elevations of the Eldorado National Forest, the air growing cooler, the scent of pine replacing the dust of the valley, a heavy silence settled. The Vipers, Ronin muttered, more to himself than anyone else, as he steered the van onto a barely there dirt track, leading deeper into the whispering trees. The name felt appropriate. They were stealthy, dangerous, and cornered, and somewhere in this vast wilderness, the geometric serpent of Zara's vision awaited, coiled around the next clue to their potential salvation, or their ultimate, world-ending doom. The leadership was as fractured as everything else about them, but for now, Zara's haunted eyes were fixed on the horizon, and the Vipers followed. The Outcast, the Serpent's Refraction. Chapter 12. The Snake. Perspective. Alasdair Finch. Bloody hell. Trees. So many bloody trees. You'd think nature would be a nice change from the concrete crap holes we usually end up in. Wrong. Turns out, a million whispering pine needles and the dappled sunlight filtering through leaves can fracture into just as many eye-stabbing, head-screwing geometric nightmares as a bloody city block. Maybe worse. At least city blocks have some semblance of straight lines to begin with, before my head turns them into a Picasso had a seizure. Here, in this Eldorado National Forest, sounds like a bloody casino. Everything's already curved and jagged, and then my personal brand of visual insanity just cranks it up to 11, tramping through this wilderness for what feels like days. Ronin, playing a man with a plan, keeps us moving, rationing out the stale crackers and lukewarm water he liberated. Zara, our navigator, just looks more haunted than usual, pointing vaguely towards higher ground and muttering about cold spots and angular energies. Helpful. As always, the rest of the Vipers, stupid bloody name, but better than being Kiesa's outcasts, are their usual charming selves. Naya's a walking barometer of misery, currently registering imminent downpour of despair, thanks to Ayana's latest pronouncements about ancient things that slumber and eyes in the bark. Tenoch just plods on, a silent, brooding mountain himself. And Nova. Nova probably sees the mathematical perfection in a pine cone, and finds it mildly less boring than our impending doom. We're looking for a snake, a geometric serpent eating itself, according to Zara's Technicolor dream of damnation. Right. Easy peasy. Just wander through a forest the size of a small country, looking for abstract reptile art. My specialty. The frustration is a hot, acidic burn in my gut. My flow is crackling under my skin, making the already shifting landscape ripple, with an extra layer of razor-sharp triangles and pulsating hexagons. It's worse when I'm agitated. Everything gets louder. Visually louder. The trees don't just look like trees. They look like complex, angry equations trying to solve themselves. The ground beneath my feet isn't solid. It's a tessellating pattern of Bulanjong, Korean for instability, a word Nova used once that stuck in my head, that threatens to swallow me whole. See anything yet, Al? Ronin calls from up ahead, his voice annoyingly calm. He's been asking me that every bloody hour. Because, in some twisted cosmic joke, it turns out my particular brand of fubard vision might be the key. Zara described it as geometric, angular. And who here sees the world as a never-ending, aggressive geometry lesson? Lucky bloody me. Just the usual migraine-inducing light show, mate, I shout back, kicking a pine cone that immediately shatters into a dozen smaller, angrier pine cones in my vision. Unless your snake is made of pure, unadulterated visual F** kikery, then no, I ain't seen squat. But then, something catches my eye. Not an actual snake. Not something Zara, with her regular, if haunted, eyesight, would probably pick out from the forest floor. It's a pattern. A wrongness in the usual chaos of my vision. My flow, it does this thing sometimes. When I'm not actively fighting it, or when I'm so overwhelmed that I just sort of let go, the geometric patterns, the shifting shapes, they sometimes align. Not into anything normal, God, no, but into a different kind of pattern. A deeper layer of the madness. Like seeing the code behind the glitch. And there it is, etched into a massive, moss-covered granite outcrop, half hidden by ferns. To anyone else it would just be natural cracks in the rock, shadows, the play of light. But to me, through the usual overlay of splintered reality, there's an underlying structure. A series of impossibly sharp, interconnected lines. A spiral, yes, but made of pure, hard angles. Turning in on itself. A bloody geometric Ouroboros. Hold up, I grunt, stopping so suddenly Nia almost bumps into me, which sends a fresh wave of amplified anxiety washing over me, making the new pattern shimmer violently. There. That rock. They all stop. Ronin backtracks, his eyes narrowed. Zara peers, her brow furrowed in concentration. I don't see anything, Al, she says, her voice small. Just rock. Course you don't, I snap, though there's a weird, tight feeling in my chest. For once, my messed-up head is actually useful. It's not on the rock, not like paint. It's in it. The lines. The angles. My head, it's the only way to see it. I walk closer, the rest of them following, a wary, mismatched pack. As I focus, the usual kaleidoscope of shifting, overlaying shapes around the symbol seems to quieten, just a fraction. It's like the symbol itself is a focal point for my specific brand of screwed-up perception. The lines of the geometric snake pulse with a faint, almost subliminal light that only I can perceive through the usual visual noise. It's not a comfortable sensation. It makes the usual headache throb with a new intensity, the angles of the snake design trying to imprint themselves on the inside of my skull. It's here, I say, my voice rough. I trace the impossible angles in the air with my hand, trying to show them what I'm seeing. A bloody great big geometric snake, just like Zara said, eating its own angular tail. My flow is thrumming now, reacting to the symbol, or maybe the symbol is reacting to my flow. The air around the rock feels thinner, the geometric patterns in my vision around the serpent itself becoming sharper, more defined, less chaotic. It's like this one thing in this whole F***CKED up world actually aligns with the way I see. Ronin studies the rock face intently, then me, then the rock again. You're sure, Al? Am I ever King sure about what I see, Ronin? I shoot back. But yeah, this is it. This is Zara's snake. A weird sense of, not pride, but something like grim satisfaction settles in my gut. My curse. My constant, agonizing, fractured reality. For once, it's not just a bloody hindrance. For once, it's the only thing that can cut through the crap and show us the way. Doesn't make the world any less of a betrayed, broken mess. But maybe, just maybe, being the only one who can see the true shape of this particular horror show gives me a bloody reason to keep looking. Saga of the Outcast echoes in the silence. Chapter 13, The Vacant Forge. Perspective. The Vipers. Third person limited. The geometric serpent, once deciphered by Alasdair's uniquely fractured sight, wasn't just an etching on a rock. It was a key. A subtle indentation within the angular design, when pressed with the combined desperate weight of Tenoch's brute strength and Ronin's lockpicking finesse, a skill he'd acquired with unsettling proficiency, caused a section of the granite outcrop to groan and retract, revealing a dark, narrow passage descending into the earth. The air that sighed out was cold, sterile, and carried the faint, metallic tang of ozone. A scent Alasdair had mentioned clung to his visions of the Legion. They proceeded with the caution of cornered animals, which, Ronin dryly noted, was exactly what they were. Ayana's whispers intensified into a low, panicked hum, her unseen companions apparently recoiling from something within the tunnel. Cold, she breathed, her eyes wide. So cold. Empty, but not clean. Like a wound been scoured, but still remembers the blade. Nia, walking so close to Tenoch she was practically in his shadow, whimpered softly, her small frame trembling with the ambient dread. The passage opened into a cavern, not natural, but carved with the Legion's stark, utilitarian precision. And within it, nestled like a steel tumour, was the laboratory. It was undeniably Legion, grey, angular, and eerily silent. Emergency lights flickered intermittently, casting long, dancing shadows that made Alasdair's already unstable world writhe with fresh geometric horrors. Consoles were dark, screens shattered, papers and data chips were scattered across overturned desks, as if the occupants had left in a violent hurry. It was an empty stage, but the play's sinister props remained. Ronin took point, his movements economical, eyes scanning for threats, for anything of value. "Looks like they pulled out fast," he observed, nudging a fallen chair with his foot. "Kiesa's little alert about her pets escaping must have reached them quicker than we thought. Or maybe Zara's big vision was a premonition of their facility getting hit too." Nova, typically, was the first to gravitate towards the data. While others recoiled from the oppressive atmosphere, she moved with a ghost-like calm, her fingers brushing over a still-warm console before deftly prying open a damaged access panel. "Power cells depleted," she murmured, more to herself than anyone. "But auxiliary memory units might be intact. They found parts, strange, crystalline components that pulsed with a faint, internal light even in their inert state, lengths of unfamiliar cabling that seemed to absorb the surrounding light, and metallic shards that felt unnervingly organic to the touch." Tenoch picked up one such shard, his brow furrowed. For a moment, the stoic mask seemed to crack, replaced by a look of profound ancient weariness, before it slammed back into place. The files were mostly corrupted, wiped with brutal efficiency, but some fragments remained. Schematics of devices that made Ronin's eyes narrow with strategic interest and a healthy dose of fear. Devices designed to channel and amplify flow on an industrial scale. Research notes on anomalous flow signatures, with case files that were chillingly similar to their own profiles, though heavily redacted. They were categories, specimens. Then Nova managed to power up a secondary data reader, and a series of short, corrupted video logs flickered to life on a cracked monitor. The images were disjointed. A vast subterranean cavern far larger than this lab, glimpses of the machine Zara had seen, a colossal, intricate latticework of black metal and pulsing crystals humming with terrifying power. Legion scientists in sterile suits, their faces obscured, making adjustments, their voices a low, dispassionate murmur discussing harmonic convergence, null field stability, and Omega Protocol. As the last garbled video segment played, a close-up of the geometric serpent symbol, now glowing with an internal, sickly green light, followed by a deafening burst of static and a catastrophic energy discharge that overloaded the playback unit. Zara cried out, her hands flying to her temples. The lab, already a place of oppressive silence, seemed to warp around her. The shadows cast by the flickering emergency lights deepened, congealing into new, more menacing shapes in Alasdair's vision. Ayana began to keen, a high, thin sound of pure terror, her voices no longer whispering but screaming in a cacophony that Nia felt like 1,000 needles piercing her skin, causing her to double over with a gasp. It's changing," Zara stammered, her eyes wide and unfocused, staring at a point somewhere beyond the ruined lab wall. "The vision, it's not just the end, it's a harvest." New images, more distorted and visceral than before, flooded her mind, spilling out in broken phrases. They're not just unmaking, they're taking the flow, our flow, it feeds the machine. The serpent, it uncoils, it devours reality. She saw the faces of the outcasts, not as they were now, but stretched, pale, their life force, their unique flows being siphoned into the colossal humming engine of the Legion. She saw the world not just ending in fire, but fading into a grey, ordered, silent nothingness, the vibrant chaos of existence replaced by the Legion's sterile, absolute control. The serpent symbol, she gasped. It's on the machine. It's their core. Their control point. And it's calling. It wants more. The air in the abandoned lab grew colder still. The few answers they had found, the Legion's interest in them, the existence of the machine, had only birthed 100 more terrifying questions. What was the Omega Protocol? What was this harvest? And how could 7 broken anomalies, the Vipers, possibly stand against a force that sought to devour reality itself, a force that saw them merely as fuel for its unfathomable engine? Ronin looked from Zara's trembling form to the dead screen, then to the scattered alien parts on the lab floor. The grim set of his jaw tightened. The world might not be worth saving, but being turned into a battery for its destruction, that was a fate even he wouldn't wish on his worst enemy, which, at the moment, was probably still Alasdair. The new visions, raw and terrifying, hung in the silence of the Legion's empty forge, painting a future even darker than the one they had fled. The path ahead, already shrouded in uncertainty, had just been plunged into a far more profound and desperate night. Saga of the Outcast, the cacophony of discovery. Chapter 14, Whispers from the Walls. Perspective, Ayana Baptiste. The silence in this Legion place, it's a lie. It's always a lie. For me, anyway. Out here, in this cold, dead laboratory buried under the pines of El Dorado, the usual chorus in my head has found new, sharper voices. They claw at the inside of my skull, thrilled and terrified by the lingering taste of whatever horrors happened here. The others, the Vipers, they move through the wreckage like ghosts in their own right, sifting through broken tech and scattered files. Ronin barks orders, Alasdair kicks things, Zara still looks like she's seeing the end of the world in every shadow. They don't hear these whispers. The ones that crawl out from the stains on the floor, and the cracks in the reinforced glass. My flow, it's a curse, I know it is. A broken antenna picking up every nightmare frequency the universe can spit out. But sometimes the voices, amidst their usual torment of mockery and fear, they snag on something real. A truth buried under the noise. It's like trying to find a single, specific scream in a stadium full of them. Exhausting. Terrifying. We've been here for hours. Since Zara's last awful vision about the harvest, the air is thick with the ghosts of bad intentions. Nia can barely breathe, doubled over in a corner, absorbing it all like a psychic sponge. Even Tenoch, our silent mountain, seems more compressed, like the oppressive atmosphere is physically weighing him down. Nova, of course, just catalogues. Residual biosignatures, she'd murmured earlier, running a hand over a stained operating table. Indicative of extreme physiological distress. No kidding. The clue. We need another one. Zara's visions are too big, too broken. The serpent devours reality, she'd said. Great. What do we do with that? Ayana. Ronin's voice cuts through my internal cacophony. He's looking at me with that sharp, calculating gaze. He doesn't trust my voices, no one really does. But he's desperate. We all are. Your companions. Are they picking up anything useful amidst their usual charming chatter? Anything beyond we're all doomed? I flinch. They don't like this place, I whisper, hugging myself. It's an understatement. The voices are frantic. One is just a high-pitched keen, a sound that makes my teeth ache. Another is a guttural chanting, words I don't understand but that feel greasy and wrong. But then there's a third one, a newer one, that's been growing in intensity since we found those corrupted video logs. It's a whisper, but clear, sharp, cutting through the others. It repeats. Over and over. The heart. The heart is sick. Listen to the sick heart. Under the eye that does not see. What is it? Zara asks, her own eyes wide with a familiar fear. I shake my head, pressing my palms to my ears, but it does no good. The voice is inside. It's a rhyme? No. Just words. The heart is sick. Listen to the sick heart. Under the eye that does not see. Alasdair scoffs. Brilliant. More riddles. Just what we bloody needed. The room seems to ripple around him for a moment, the geometric patterns of his vision flaring with his irritation. But Ronin is watching me intently. A sick heart? What does that mean? Some kind of medical bay? We've searched those. No, I say, the whisper insistent, almost painful now. It's pulling me. My gaze is drawn across the lab, past the overturned console, shattered equipment, towards a section of wall that looks blank. Just a flat grey panel, undamaged, almost deliberately ignored. Under the eye that does not see. I point, my hand trembling. There. That wall. The voice. It's loudest there. Ronin exchanges a skeptical glance with Tenoch, but they move towards it. The panel looks solid. No obvious seams, no handles. An eye that does not see, Nova muses, drifting closer, her head tilted. She runs a detached hand over the smooth surface. A camera lens, perhaps, but deactivated. Or a symbolic representation. The whispering in my head intensifies as they get closer to the wall. The heart. The sick heart beats there. Listen. Listen. It's so loud I can barely hear my own thoughts. My breath hitches. This is how it always is when the voices latch onto something. It feels like being dragged by invisible chains. There's nothing here, Ayana, Ronin says, his voice tight with impatience, running his hands over the panel. It's under it, I gasp, the pressure in my head building. The eye, what doesn't see? What's always there but never looks? My gaze falls on a small, circular ventilation grate near the floor, just beneath the blank panel. An opening. An unseeing eye. Tenoch, without a word, kneels. His powerful hands grip the edges of the grate. With a grunt and a screech of tortured metal, he rips it from the wall. Behind it, there's a small, dark alcove, and inside something is definitely sick. It's not a heart, not a literal one. It's a data core, smaller than the ones we'd seen before, but it's corrupted. Visibly, dark, oily veins pulse beneath its crystalline surface, and it emits a faint, almost inaudible thrumming that resonates deep in my bones, making the voices in my head spike with a mixture of fear and hunger? No, not hunger. Recognition. Nova is there instantly, her usual detachment tinged with something that might be academic curiosity. A quarantined data core, she says, peering into the alcove. The sickness is likely advanced data decay or a viral containment. Its energy signature is irregular. Ronin pulls out a small toolkit he'd salvaged. Can you access it? Potentially, Nova replies. But its instability is a risk. The whispering voice in my head is almost a roar now, a triumphant, terrifying sound. The sick heart knows the way. It sings the song of the harvest. It names the next note. As Nova carefully begins to interface with the damaged core, the flickering emergency lights in the lab stutter violently. A wave of intense cold washes through the room, and even Alasdair stumbles, his hand flying to his head as the geometry of his vision collapses into an agonizing, swirling vortex. Naya lets out a thin scream, clutching at Zara. And I see it. Just for a fraction of a second. Not a full vision like Zara's, but a flash, imprinted on my retinas by the shriek of the voices and the thrum of that sick core. A name. A place. Coordinates. And a new symbol, colder and sharper than the serpent. The next clue. Found not in files or videos, but in the echo of a dead machine's corrupted heart. A whisper from the walls that only I, the girl haunted by 1,000 voices, could truly hear. The horror of it is a cold knot in my stomach. Because if this is how we find our way, by listening to the sickness and the screams, what kind of path are we even on? Saga of the Outcast, The Weight of Silence, The Echo of Ash. Chapter 15, The Core's Cold Truth. Perspective, Tenoch Cardanus. The air in this buried Legion tomb, for that's what it felt like, a tomb of forgotten cruelties, went from cold to colder after Ayana's little fit. The sick heart, that corrupted data core Nova was coaxing secrets from, had pulsed, and the lights had died, plunging us into a red, hellish glow from the emergency strobes. Ayana had gasped out a name. Coordinates. Another damn symbol. More pieces for Zara's broken future. More reasons for this path to stretch on. My own flow, that quiet fire I keep banked deep inside, stirred. Not with the usual siren song of oblivion my inner voice hums, but with something else. A resonance. This place, it stank of endings. Efficient ones. The Legion's work. There was a stark, utilitarian beauty to their methods, a chilling echo of the peace my voice promised, twisted into a new, horrifying shape. order achieved through absolute erasure. While Ronin tried to get more sense out of a babbling Ayana, and Alasdair cursed the flickering red lights that were no doubt turning his world into a fresh geometric nightmare, I found myself drawn away from the group. The thrumming from that data core, even after Nova had carefully disconnected it, had left an imprint, a vibration in the very stone of this lab that pulled at something in me. It wasn't a voice like Ayana's. Mine is an internal landscape, a vast, silent desert under a sky of burning ash. But sometimes, objects, places, they resonate with that landscape. This lab hummed with it. The lingering psychic residue of detached cruelty, of experiments conducted without passion, only a cold, calculating drive towards a specific, terrible outcome. It felt familiar. A part of me understood it. That part scared the rest of me. I moved deeper into a section of the lab we hadn't thoroughly searched, a place where the shadows clung thicker, where the metallic scent of old blood and ozone was strongest. The emergency strobes cast jerky, disorienting flashes. Most of the equipment here was smashed, not just abandoned. Vandalized from the inside, it looked like. Or perhaps a contained experiment that had gone catastrophically wrong. My hand brushed against a cool, metallic surface, recessed into a wall, almost hidden behind a toppled bank of machinery. Not a panel like the one Ayana's voices had led us to. This was different. A drawer. Heavy. Locked. The others were still occupied with Ayana's fragmented clue, a facility designation in some remote northern territory, a project chimera, and the new symbol, a stark three-pronged claw. Ronin was already trying to match it to Legion databases on his salvaged tablet. No one noticed me. I preferred it that way. The lock was complex, but the mechanism felt brittle. That internal fire, the one that usually whispered of my own unmaking, flared with a different intent. I focused, drawing on that coiled pressure within me, not letting it explode outwards in psychic backlash as it sometimes did when I lost control, but channeling it, a fine, intense point of force. My fingers, though they appeared outwardly calm, trembled with the contained energy. There was a sharp crack. The lock yielded. Inside the drawer, nestled on faded, stained velvet, was a single object. Not a data chip. Not a weapon. It was a child's doll. Old, handmade, with button eyes and crudely stitched yarn hair. One of its button eyes was missing, leaving a dark, hollow socket. And clutched in its tiny, stitched hand, almost invisible, was a small, tarnished silver locket. The air around me dropped another 10 degrees. The silence in my head, the usual vast desert, was suddenly filled with a single, piercing scream, a sound that wasn't mine, yet resonated with every broken piece of me. It was the echo of a pain so profound it had stained this place, this object. The Legion hadn't just experimented on flow, on anomalies. They had experimented on children. The doll itself was unremarkable, except for the aura of absolute desolation that clung to it. But the locket, my fingers, thick and clumsy, fumbled with the clasp. It sprang open. Inside, there was no portrait, just a tiny, almost microscopic inscription. It wasn't a name. It wasn't coordinates. It was a sequence, a string of characters, letters and numbers, that looked like a genetic marker, or a line of code. And beneath it, so faint I almost missed it in the pulsating red light, was their new symbol, the three-pronged claw. This was no grand mystery solved with a flash of insight. This was a descent. The horror wasn't a monster jumping from the shadows. It was the cold, methodical cruelty this place represented, the quiet suffering embedded in this forgotten toy. The Legion's harvest, Zara had seen. Their Omega Protocol. It wasn't just about power. It was about ingredients. And we, the Vipers, were on the list. The inner voice, the one that usually urged me towards my own quiet end, was silent for once. Drowned out. Or perhaps it was listening. Recognizing a force of annihilation that dwarfed its own intimate whispers. I closed the locket, the cold metal, a brand against my palm. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This wasn't just about stopping a machine. This was about something that had looked into the heart of innocence and decided it was raw material. The new clue wasn't a map. It was a testament. And it filled my silent desert with the first stirrings of a storm. A storm that wasn't aimed inward. Not this time. Saga of the Outcast, the Crawling Geometry. Chapter 16, Residual Animation. Perspective. Alasdair Finch, the silence Tenoch had unearthed with that creepy doll, and its locket was worse than any of Ayana's screaming voices. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket woven from the ghosts of whatever poor sods the Legion had messed with in this hole. We were all on edge, the flickering red emergency lights painting our faces in bloody, jumping shadows. Ronin was trying to make sense of the code from the locket, muttering about genetic markers and encryption keys. Zara was staring at the new claw symbol Tenoch had found, her face even paler than usual, like it was another nail in the coffin of her sanity. That's when my world, already a bloody funhouse of shifting, aggressive shapes, decided to throw in a new attraction. It started subtly. A flicker in the periphery of my vision that wasn't the usual pulse of a fracturing wall or the kaleidoscopic swirl of a shadow. This was different. Coordinated. Like a set of triangles deciding to go for a crawl. Anyone else see that? I grunted, my voice rough. The others looked up, their faces strained in the crimson gloom. See what, Al? Ronin asked, not looking away from his tablet. Another pretty pattern? No, not a bloody pattern, I snapped. Movement. Over there. I pointed towards a darker section of the lab, where a bank of machinery lay mangled, its guts spilling out like metallic entrails. The geometry in that area was particularly loud. Jagged shards of light and shadow danced with a feverish intensity. But through it, I'd seen it. A ripple. A flowing, multi-angled thing. Probably just your head, mate, Ronin said, still not looking up. Typical? But Ayana went rigid. No, she whispered, her eyes wide with a fresh terror, fixed on the same spot I was indicating. The voices, they went quiet. All at once, like something scared them. That got everyone's attention. Even Nova tilted her head, her empty gaze sweeping towards the mangled machinery. For Ayana's chorus of tormentors to go silent? That was new. That was wrong. Then I saw it again. Clearer this time. Or as clear as anything ever is in my bloody head. It wasn't one thing. It was pieces. Fragments of metal, shards of crystal like the ones we'd seen earlier, lengths of that light-absorbing cable, all moving together. Not like they were being dragged. Like they were part of something. Assembling. Disassembling. A flowing, shifting construct of sharp edges and broken components, crawling out from under the wreckage. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, a stop-motion animation of pure, geometric wrongness. The shapes it formed were impossible, Escher-like. It was a living, breathing glitch in reality. My flow reacted instantly, not with an outward burst, but with an inward recoil that made my vision strobe violently. The thing, it resonated with the chaos in my head. The angles of its form, the way it moved. It was like seeing my own fractured perception given a horrifying, tangible body. There, I yelled, scrambling back a step. See it? Crawling. Like a bloody centipede made of scrap and nightmares. Zara whimpered, pressing herself against Tenoch, who had straightened up, his body a coiled spring of readiness. I don't see a centipede, Al, she stammered, but the air there, it's twisting, like her visions, but alive. Nia was just making small, choked sounds, her eyes screwed shut, probably feeling the pure, distilled wrongness of the thing as a physical blow. Ronin was finally looking, his usual smirk gone, replaced by a grim, focused intensity. Nova? What the hell is that? Nova hadn't moved, but her head was tracking the crawling, geometric horror. Unidentified automaton, she stated, her voice as flat as ever, though perhaps a fraction faster. Likely a discarded experimental unit. Autonomous. Scavenging components. Its locomotion is erratic but adaptive. Erratic was one word for it. The thing, maybe 5 feet long now, its body a shifting amalgamation of jagged metal and pulsing, damaged crystals, reared up on a set of misshapen, multi-jointed limbs made of bundled cables. Where a head should be, there was only a fractured lens, like a broken camera eye, glowing with the same sickly green light we'd seen in the corrupted video logs. It didn't make a sound, but the geometry around it screamed in my vision. The very air seemed to bend and refract as it moved, like heat haze over asphalt, but made of pure, sharp angles. Is it Legion? Zara whispered. It's their bloody junk, isn't it? I snarled, my fists clenching. My flow was itching, wanting to lash out, to shatter this walking, crawling insult to reality. Something they left behind. Something that's still bloody alive. The broken lens swiveled, focusing on us. I could feel a cold, analytical intelligence behind it, something utterly alien. And then a new sound cut through the lab, not from Ayana's voices, not from us. A high-pitched electronic whine, like stressed metal, emanating from the creature itself. The geometric patterns in my vision around it intensified, cohering into something almost intelligent. A threat display. The mystery of what it was became secondary to the immediate horror of its presence. It took a jerky step towards us, its makeshift limbs scraping against the concrete floor, the sound like nails on a coffin. It wasn't just alive. It was aware. And it was reacting to us. This lab wasn't just a tomb of past horrors. One of them was still here. And it looked like it was ready to play. Saga of the Outcast, the Crawling Geometry. Chapter 16, Residual Animation. Perspective, Alasdair Finch. The silence Tenoch had unearthed with that creepy doll, and its locket was worse than any of Ayana's screaming voices. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket woven from the ghosts of whatever poor sods the Legion had messed with in this hole. We were all on edge, the flickering red emergency lights painting our faces in bloody, jumping shadows. Ronin was trying to make sense of the code from the locket, muttering about genetic markers and encryption keys. Zara was staring at the new claw symbol Tenoch had found, her face even paler than usual, like it was another nail in the coffin of her sanity. That's when my world, already a bloody funhouse of shifting, aggressive shapes, decided to throw in a new attraction. It started subtly. A flicker in the periphery of my vision that wasn't the usual pulse of a fracturing wall or the kaleidoscopic swirl of a shadow. This was different. Coordinated. Like a set of triangles deciding to go for a crawl. Anyone else see that? I grunted, my voice rough. The others looked up, their faces strained in the crimson gloom. See what, Al? Ronin asked, not looking away from his tablet. Another pretty pattern? No, not a bloody pattern, I snapped. Movement. Over there, I pointed towards a darker section of the lab, where a bank of machinery lay mangled, its guts spilling out like metallic entrails. The geometry in that area was particularly loud. Jagged shards of light and shadow danced with a feverish intensity. But through it, I'd seen it. A ripple. A flowing, multi-angled thing. Probably just your head, mate, Ronin said, still not looking up. Typical? But Ayana went rigid. No, she whispered, her eyes wide with a fresh terror, fixed on the same spot I was indicating. The voices, they went quiet. All at once, like something scared them. That got everyone's attention. Even Nova tilted her head, her empty gaze sweeping towards the mangled machinery. For Ayana's chorus of tormentors to go silent? That was new. That was wrong. Then I saw it again. Clearer this time. Or as clear as anything ever is in my bloody head. It wasn't one thing. It was pieces. Fragments of metal, shards of crystal like the ones we'd seen earlier, lengths of that light-absorbing cable, all moving together. Not like they were being dragged. Like they were part of something. Assembling. Disassembling. A flowing, shifting construct of sharp edges and broken components, crawling out from under the wreckage. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, a stop-motion animation of pure, geometric wrongness. The shapes it formed were impossible, Escher-like. It was a living, breathing glitch in reality. My flow reacted instantly, not with an outward burst, but with an inward recoil that made my vision strobe violently. The thing, it resonated with the chaos in my head. The angles of its form, the way it moved. It was like seeing my own fractured perception given a horrifying, tangible body. There, I yelled, scrambling back a step. See it? Crawling. Like a bloody centipede made of scrap and nightmares. Zara whimpered, pressing herself against Tenoch, who had straightened up, his body a coiled spring of readiness. I don't see a centipede, Al, she stammered, but the air there, it's twisting. Like her visions, but alive. Nia was just making small, choked sounds, her eyes screwed shut, probably feeling the pure, distilled wrongness of the thing as a physical blow. Ronin was finally looking, his usual smirk gone, replaced by a grim, focused intensity. Nova? What the hell is that? Nova hadn't moved, but her head was tracking the crawling, geometric horror. Unidentified automaton, she stated, her voice as flat as ever, though perhaps a fraction faster. Likely a discarded experimental unit. Autonomous. Scavenging components. Its locomotion is erratic but adaptive. Erratic was one word for it. The thing, maybe 5 feet long now, its body a shifting amalgamation of jagged metal and pulsing, damaged crystals, reared up on a set of misshapen, multi-jointed limbs made of bundled cables. Where a head should be, there was only a fractured lens, like a broken camera eye, glowing with the same sickly green light we'd seen in the corrupted video logs. It didn't make a sound, but the geometry around it screamed in my vision. The very air seemed to bend and refract as it moved, like heat haze over asphalt, but made of pure, sharp angles. Is it Legion? Zara whispered. It's their bloody junk, isn't it? I snarled, my fists clenching. My flow was itching, wanting to lash out, to shatter this walking, crawling insult to reality. Something they left behind. Something that's still bloody alive. The broken lens swiveled, focusing on us. I could feel a cold, analytical intelligence behind it, something utterly alien. And then a new sound cut through the lab, not from Ayana's voices, not from us. A high-pitched electronic whine, like stressed metal, emanating from the creature itself. The geometric patterns in my vision around it intensified, cohering into something almost intelligent. A threat display. The mystery of what it was became secondary to the immediate horror of its presence. It took a jerky step towards us, its makeshift limbs scraping against the concrete floor, the sound like nails on a coffin. It wasn't just alive. It was aware. And it was reacting to us. This lab wasn't just a tomb of past horrors. One of them was still here. And it looked like it was ready to play. Saga of the Outcast, the Unblinking Eye, Chapter 17. Lockdown. Perspective. The Vipers. Third person limited. The high-pitched whine from the scavenging automaton, the crawling geometry of scrap and malignant awareness, sliced through the stale air of the Legion lab in El Dorado National Forest. Its fractured lens, glowing with that sickly green light, fixed on them. Then, with a sound like grinding teeth and snapping wires, the main blast door at the tunnel entrance slammed shut with a deafening clang, followed by secondary shutters crashing down over the few reinforced windows. Heavy, metallic thuds echoed from deeper within the facility. Red emergency lights pulsed, casting the scene in a visceral, rhythmic wash of crimson and shadow. Lockdown? They were trapped. Nova. Get that door. Ronin yelled, already shoving Zara and a paranoia behind a bank of sturdy, overturned consoles. His mind raced. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was a designed response. Negative, Nova's voice came back, calm as ever despite the sudden, violent imprisonment. She was already at the blast door controls, her fingers flying over the panel. Main power conduits are severed. Lockdown protocol appears, localized and self-triggered by the automaton's activation. It's an arena. The automaton, subject scavenger as a flickering console, briefly designated it before dying, lurched forward. Its cable limbs scraped and sparked, its crystalline components pulsed erratically, and the very air around it seemed to warp and twist into the aggressive, shifting geometries that defined Alasdair's waking nightmare. Spread out, Alasdair roared, already unleashing his frustration. His flow surged, not in a controlled blast, but as a wave of pure, disruptive force. The concrete floor beneath the automaton buckled and cracked, sharp, triangular shards erupting upwards. The creature stumbled, its movements becoming even more disjointed, but the attack seemed to pass through parts of its constantly reconfiguring body, as if some sections were momentarily intangible. "It's not solid?" Zara cried, her voice tight with terror. One hand pressed to her temple as fragmented visions of the creature's impossible movements assaulted her. "It changes. The shapes, they don't obey anything." The automaton retaliated. A beam of concentrated, emerald-green energy shot from its fractured lens. Not quite a laser, more like a focused wave of pure, disruptive flow. It struck a nearby console and the metal screamed, twisting into an unnatural, crystalline structure before exploding into razor-sharp fragments. Tenoch moved then, a silent, implacable force. He put himself between the creature and the others, his arms raised, not in surrender, but as if bracing against a hurricane. The next energy beam struck him, and the air crackled. Tenoch grunted, skidding back a few inches, his clothes smoking where the beam had hit, but he held his ground. The self-destructive urge that usually gnawed at him now seemed to find an external target, his internal fire transmuting into a shield of sheer, stubborn negation. "Ayana!" "Anything?" Ronin yelled, ducking as a whip-like cable lashed out from the automaton, cracking inches from his head. "What are your voices saying now that they're not so bloody scared?" Ayana was pressed against the wall, eyes wide, her hands covering her ears. It listens, she shrieked. Not with ears. It feels the flow. Our flow. It's hungry for it. The automaton's movements became more purposeful, less jerky. It seemed to learn from their attacks, its form shifting, adapting. A section of its body detached, a swirling vortex of metal shards and wires, and flew towards Alasdair, who met it with a roar, his own chaotic flow erupting in a localized storm of spatial distortions, the air ripping and tearing around the incoming projectile. The vortex was shredded, but Alasdair staggered back, a line of blood trickling from his nose. Its core components are shielded by fluctuating quantum states. Nova announced from her position near a relatively intact data port, where she was frantically trying to interface a salvaged Legion datapad. Direct kinetic or energy attacks are inefficient. It's phasing between realities or something analogous. Speak English, you bloody icicle, Alasdair bellowed, dodging another energy beam that solidified a section of the wall into a grotesque, glassy sculpture. It's hard to hit, Ronin translated, his eyes darting, looking for an angle, any weakness. He saw none. This thing was a Legion nightmare-given form, designed to deal with flow users, designed to be unkillable by conventional means. Nia, surprisingly, let out a choked sob that wasn't just fear. It's in pain, she whispered, her eyes fixed on the creature, tears streaming down her face. All those broken parts, they're screaming. It doesn't want to fight. It just wants to be whole. The automaton paused, its fractured lens tilting almost inquisitively towards Nia. The high-pitched whine it emitted, softened for a microsecond, became almost mournful. Then Tenoch roared, a sound torn from his very core as the creature, ignoring Nia, slammed a newly formed crystalline blade towards him. He caught it, not with his hands, but with a wall of pure compressed force that erupted from him, the psychic backlash of his contained agony finally unleashed. The blade shattered, and the automaton recoiled, its form flickering wildly. Zara. Its next move, Ronin yelled, seeing a momentary opening. Zara, her eyes unfocused, screamed, "The ceiling! It's going to." Before she could finish, sections of the ceiling above them, pipes, ventilation shafts, light fixtures, detached, animated by the same malevolent energy, and rained down in a deadly shower of metal and sparking wires. The Vipers scattered, scrambling for cover, the fight devolving into a desperate, chaotic struggle for survival in their lockdown metal and concrete tomb. The Legion lab wasn't just a place of past horrors, it was an active, hungry, and intelligent slaughterhouse, and its unblinking, fractured eye was fixed squarely on them. Saga of the Outcast, The Algorithm of Agony, Chapter 18, The Echo in the Machine. Perspective, Nova Kim. The silence that descended after the automaton, subject scavenger, finally collapsed into a twitching heap of its constituent parts was, for once, almost absolute. Even Ayana's ever-present whispers seemed to have momentarily choked on the acrid scent of fried circuitry and ozone that filled the lockdown Legion laboratory in Eldorado National Forest. The emergency lights pulsed their relentless crimson, painting the scene in hues of a fresh slaughter. Alasdair was nursing a bleeding arm, his breath coming in ragged gasps, the geometric patterns of his vision no doubt still screaming from the chaotic fight. Tenoch stood like a monolith, radiating a dangerous heat from his earlier psychic backlash. Nia was being comforted by Zara, both of them trembling. Ronin, ever the pragmatist, was already checking their dwindling supplies and the integrity of the blast door, his expression grim. My own internal processors were working at maximum efficiency. The encounter had provided a wealth of data. Subject scavengers, erratic movements, its ability to phase and reconfigure, its targeted energy bursts, Nia's empathic reading of its pain and desire to be whole, these were all critical variables. The lockdown remained active. We were still trapped. Understanding the nature of our warden was paramount. While the others caught their breath or tended to minor injuries, I approached the now inert pile of scrap. Its fractured lens was dark, the sickly green glow extinguished. Some of its crystalline components still pulsed with a faint, residual energy. My flow, the subtle perception of reality's underlying code, allowed me to sense the complex, damaged information stream still flickering within its structure. It was not truly dead, merely offline. The sick heart, the quarantine data core Ayana's voices had led us to, was still clutched in my hand. Its instability had been a risk, but during the fight, as subject scavenger's energy patterns had flared, I had observed a distinct sympathetic resonance between it and the core. A connection. The automaton, I stated, my voice cutting through the relative quiet, causing a few of them to jump. Its core programming appears to be fragmented, corrupted, but it's linked to this. I held up the sick heart. This core doesn't just contain data, it seems to have housed, or attempted to house, a consciousness matrix. Likely experimental. Ronin frowned. A consciousness? You mean like an AI? Potentially more complex, I clarified, carefully placing the sick heart onto a relatively stable, flat piece of wreckage and interfacing it with the datapad I had been attempting to use earlier. The datapad, Legion Tech itself, flickered erratically but managed to establish a tenuous link. The Legion was researching direct flow-to-digital consciousness transfer and biointegration with mechanical constructs. Project Chimera, as Ayana's flash indicated, likely refers to this line of experimentation. The data streams from the sick heart began to populate the datapad's screen. Corrupted files, fragmented logs, but enough. My optical sensors scanned the lines of code, the error messages, the ghost imprints of failed simulations. The horror of it was not in a sudden shock, but in the cold, logical assembly of irrefutable facts. Subject Scavenger was not designed as a combat unit, I continued, piecing together the digital fragments. It was designated Integration Candidate 7. Its base code indicates a biological consciousness was forcibly uploaded and merged with an adaptive mechanical framework. The scavenging behavior was its damaged core programming attempting to repair and complete itself using available materials. The pain Nia sensed was likely the conflict between the fragmented organic consciousness and the corrupted machine code. A wave of revulsion, an alien sensation I registered with detached curiosity, passed through the others. Zara made a choked sound. A person? That thing was a person, or parts of multiple, I amended, analysing a particularly disturbing subroutine labelled Synergy Protocol, Fused Neural Networks. The Legion's notes refer to optimal assimilation of disparate flow-sensitive juvenile subjects. The doll Tenoch found, the genetic marker in the locket, they were likely candidates. Or donors. The mystery of the automaton was unravelling, and the picture it painted was grotesque. This wasn't just a machine. It was a digital tomb, a mechanical Frankenstein cobbled together from stolen lives and shattered minds, driven by the tortured echoes of an unwilling composite consciousness. Its attacks weren't malice. They were the flailing of a broken, terrified entity, trying to defend its perceived integrity, or perhaps simply lashing out from an unbearable, unending state of internal conflict. Alasdair, who had been silent, his face a mask of fury and disgust as he stared at the inert automaton, finally spoke, his voice a low snarl. So they took kids, people with the flow like us, and shoved them into that thing? The geometric patterns in his eyes pulsed with a violent crimson light. The data suggests a high failure rate, I stated. Integration Candidate 7 was deemed non-viable, but retained for further study of emergent behavioural patterns in hostile environments. This lab was its containment. The lockdown protocol was designed to prevent its escape and to observe its interactions with new stimuli. Us. We were the new stimuli. The horror was not in its monstrous form, but in its tragic, manufactured genesis. The Legion hadn't just built a weapon, they had created an abomination, a testament to their utter disregard for life, for consciousness, for the very essence of the flow they sought to control. The something still alive was the ghost in the machine, the screaming remnants of stolen souls, trapped in a prison of malfunctioning code and broken metal. Ayana was openly weeping now, her own voices perhaps finding a horrifying kinship with the silent screams emanating from the machine's core. It wanted to be whole, she sobbed. That's what Naya said. It was trying to put itself back together. The mystery of the automaton was solved. It was a failed experiment, a digital chimera, a repository of pain, and its existence was a stark, chilling warning of what the Legion considered progress, and what their harvest might truly entail. The cold, hard data on the screen painted a future where anomalies like the Vipers weren't just studied or controlled, but disassembled and repurposed into something new, something monstrous, something. Legion.